Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. Today we're going to be going over The Savior, number 2 from Trident Comics. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own work. This is Random Access. It's a 12-page, full-size, now full-color comic book. And 10 pages are done by me, and two pages are done by Christopher Knox and Paul Courtjohn. And so it comes out on Patreon, and you can get these for $3. And you can also get my whole backlog of art for digitally, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages. And you could also check these out at alexanderturbin.com, or you could just message me at alexturbin0441 at Instagram or alexturbin0441 at yahoo.com. The Patreon is patreon.com/alexanderturbin. And yeah, so I appreciate all the support and thanks. So, The Savior. This is an odd one because I do remember getting it back in the day. I have 2 issues. I have 2 and 3. I don't have number 1. I don't know if I just missed it or I sold it or something. It is done by Mark Millar and Nigel Kitching. Everybody knows, obviously, Mark Millar. He did so many things. It's hard to name all of them. I mean, he's done so much work for Marvel, and does he ever work for DC? But I mean, he's done Kick-Ass. He's done just so much stuff. And it's really great. He's done some really great stuff. So this is his first published work, and so it's hard to go hard on him. But at the same time, I'm not going to cut him any slack either because he's a big fancy comic book movie writer now. Nigel Kitching draws Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know if that's new or what. So let's get into the story. It's kind of a little bit hard to understand the story. I did look up what happened in issue number 1, and because they don't really tell you in the issue what happened previously. But apparently there's the Savior, which is a superhero, but he's really like either a demon or the devil. And then there's also this other Savior who is Jesus. So basically Jesus comes back to the world, and he's trying to save the world, and he's the only one that can actually kill the Savior, I guess. So maybe he is the devil. So there's some sort of confrontation between the Savior and Jesus coming up. So it's a very intricate storyline. There's lots of little nuanced things that I think come from the first issue that I just didn't understand. And but I'll just try to keep up anyway. Anyway, let's go over the story, and then afterwards we'll go into the art and the writing and stuff. So it's just a building, a church maybe, looks like a church, and it has somebody on a cross, assuming it's Jesus, and there's somebody painting. Can't tell this from here, but here he's painting his window black. And Jesus is burning on the cross, and can't really tell exactly why. But this is presumably the Savior, and who is a bad guy, although he's like a superhero. So he pretends to do good stuff, but he's doing all that stuff in like hiding his true form or whatever. It ends up being a dream or a nightmare of this guy, who I'm not entirely sure who this is. He says that his palms are itchy already, like he's going to start bleeding from them. So maybe he's a Jesus type character too. I think maybe the whole point of this book is it's a lot of different saviors from a lot of different aspects. Like it's Jesus, but it's also a superhero, and then maybe it's another character who's really is Jesus. I don't know if the other Jesus character is really Jesus or not Jesus. It's really hard to tell. But this Jesus, or this character who has stigmata in his hands anyway, he's talking about something. I can only guess that he's talking about somebody in the previous issue. He says that maybe he's talking about Tony. So he's talking about Tony, and apparently he's in jail, and he's gonna go bail Tony out. So it's really kind of hard to say what happened there. Um, then it cuts to the other Jesus, which, it's very difficult to see what's going on from page to page and from panel to panel. That being said, well, let's just continue on. It's got this priest, and he's talking about his sermon, or he's having his sermon, and Jesus gets up and he leaves the bull pulpit. Pulpit? No, that's not what it is. Anyway, the chairs in the church, and he goes up and he kind of takes over the sermon, and he starts preaching to the gospel to the religious people there, and he's just kind of talking about how he's Jesus, and well, he doesn't actually say he's Jesus, but he just kind of hinted or talks about how there's not as many Christians as he was hoping, or something like that, and he's saying that God's on our side, so how can we go wrong? And then it cuts to another scene where he's talking about Tony. I don't know who this Tony is. This is really kind of a problem, because I really wish there was something in the beginning pages where it discussed what happened in the previous issue, and also what, who some of these characters are, because I'm getting a little bit confused by who Tony is, who Brian is. Are these police officers? Are they like FBI M16 or whatever it is, M6? It's very British. It's a British comic book. So some of these things are obviously going to be a little bit weird for Americans. But, at the time, I was reading a lot of Vertigo and Sandman and Alan Moore stuff, and Grant Morrison stuff, and all this stuff. So I've read a lot of British comics, and it really shouldn't be that hard to tell what's going on. And I can only assume that just because I missed the first issue, didn't get the first issue, that I kind of don't, that's why I don't know what's going on a little bit. But it's these two guys, and I think they're some sort of police officers or something. And then they drop off Tony. Okay, this is Tony. Don't know who he is. Don't know what he has to do with the story. But he drops him off, and he just goes off and takes off. Then it goes back to the church, where the original priest, who was knocked aside by this apparent Jesus, has called the cops, and the cops are telling Jesus that he's not Jesus or whatever, and he kind of attacks him, and he's going to throw him in jail. And the priest says, "Bloody religious maniacs," even though he doesn't believe he's Jesus, but apparently he is. I don't know. So later on, it doesn't say later on, but it's at a bar, and there's another character. I'm not entirely sure. They must be friends of Jesus, or whoever this guy is who is pretending to be Jesus. I don't really know if he is supposed to be. But he's sitting there at the bar, and he's ordering water, and the water is turning into wine. And then they're just kind of, he's talking to friends, or the friends are talking to him, or whatever. And so he's watching TV up above the bar, and it's the other savior, superhero, who's doing these humanitarian works in Africa, and he's like creating new food sources, and he's like helping all of these poor people, and he's saying that he can do this because the government can't, and it's kind of he has a savior complex. So there you go. It's all mixed into the bread and butter of the comic book, I guess. Somebody starts talking about how great the savior is, and he's the other guy, a friend of the Jesus, or just maybe another bartender, another patron at the bar. He's like, "How are you getting drunk on water?" And Jesus says it's an old trick. So then we get to another part. All right, this is the priest from the very beginning who had the stigmata. So we're going back to him. I assume that's the priest. And there's another character. This is Tony. This is Tony, who got let out of jail. I'm not entirely sure. He goes to the priest's house and he's like, I'm so scared, Father. Reed Hectate's keys cost so much money. I don't know what he's talking about. Um, some sort of thing. The devil demon wants something. I'm not entirely sure. It's a like I said, it's kind of confusing. So Tony kind of smashes his head on the table because he wants to. No, he smashes his head on the table because he's being possessed by the devil or a demon. Don't know if it's a savior or if it's some other demon, but he has some sort of. He's talking to this priest who has stigmata. So, uh, so they're just having like this conversation, back and forth, and he's like, "It's gonna be all right, Tony," and he's for God's sake, and that's when he realizes that Tony is being taken over by a demon, and he says the keys won't free his soul. He was born to me. We don't know what the keys are. I don't know what the keys are. Are they from the first issue? We don't know. And he keeps saying that Tony's his, and then he lets him go. And so that's pretty much the end of that. It kind of jumps a little bit from each panel, each page to page, and it really isn't that hard to keep track of. But when you don't have some of the information, like what are these keys, who's Tony, who are the main characters that are interacting or thinking they're the saviors and stuff like that, where did they come from? I don't know. It's just it's a little bit of a hazy, foggy thing. So it's the other Jesus, the presumably real Jesus, that was at the bar, and he's talking to Tommy, one of his friends, and Tommy's just saying, "You're having a hard time. It's Saturday night. You're supposed to enjoy yourself." And so they're in a cab, and Jesus and Tommy make a dash. They're like dropped off by the cab, so they stiff the cabbie, which is very un-Jesus-y like to do. So it's kind of odd that Jesus is doing all of this stuff that he knows is wrong and knows is bad. And so it maybe makes you feel like he really isn't Jesus if he's doing things that aren't correct, like kind of like getting drunk on water that he's turned to wine. So it's a little odd and it's a little off. Then apparently we have Tommy and the priest, and they're going to some kind of cemetery or something. He says, Tony, 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 other ministers would have laughed if you told them your story. We don't know what his story was because it must have been in the last issue. So who knows what he's talking about, which makes me a little sad. I really kind of wish I had just gotten the first issue, which is like only a couple bucks on eBay, but with the shipping, it's like $6 or $7. So I don't know if I'm going to get it or not. But they have these birds fly off off them or whatever, into their faces or whatever, and they get scared and they just kind of laugh and they're wondering what the smell is. There's like a smell emanating from somewhere, and then the church smashes open and glass goes everywhere, and Tony starts ripping his face open, and there's like a demon that takes him over, and I think that's actually the savior. Is that the savior? I think this may be the savior, the one that keeps the superhero savior, the one that keeps taking over Tony's body. I think that might be the savior. It kind of looks like him. It's really it's hard to say, but does he turn from him into the savior? I think that's what happens. I think that this character Tony is being possessed by the savior, and that's what happens. It's kind of like the Sentry, with he as the Sentry and he's also the Void. So I think that's kind of like that. So he's looking for pages and keys and stuff, and the priest says he doesn't have them, and the Sentry says, well, I'll find them anyway. And a statue gets knocked over, and the savior lifts up the priest and kind of throws him down, and he gets very angry because Gabriel's list said, and then it kind of just cuts off. So then we go back to the Jesus character with his friend, and they're at another bar, and it's kind of a seedy looking bar, and there he just they're just kind of having a little bit of dialogue between them, and so there's a prostitute, and Jesus is told that she isn't a prostitute, that she's actually the oldest profession. So Jesus goes over there and tries to talk to her, and he thinks that she's a farmer because he thinks that's actually the oldest profession. So she says it's $20 to talk to her, and he whips out a wad of cash, and she's like, hey, wait a minute. So she goes over and she gets her friend because she's like, hey, there's this guy just giving away money for nothing. And she sits down to the bigger lady, the older, bigger lady. Apparently she's like a mother-daughter kind of relationship. And she's like, just sits down, and Jesus is going to give her another wad of cash. But then this other character, I don't know. I think this is the friend of the Jesus, I think. And he is the brother of the prostitute. And he's saying, get away from Jesus. And that's when the older lady tells him that they are brother and sister, and it's weird to see that. Then it cuts to another thing where it's a couple, and she's saying, Jim, and he says, shush, I'm having a little chat with this Messiah just now. So there's another Savior, there's another Jesus character, and although I think he's supposed to be like an apostle or a scribe of God or something like that, kind of like in Supernatural, how there's the scribe of God. And so, which I don't know if there's really a scribe. Is there a scribe of God in the Bible? Anybody that's religious, please let me know. So he's looking for pages. He's looking at the pages, looking for the pages, and he finally finds them. It's the Book of Azrael. And he doesn't want it. He's he lights a fire. He's trying to burn the pages, and then that doesn't work. So he tries to rip the pages, and that doesn't work. And then it cuts to another scene where there's this little girl, and it's very disturbing, where she's talking about how her parents let other men come over and touch her and hurt her. And the mother says that it's not them hurting her. It's just, it's her playing rough or whatever, and for her never to say anything and to just be quiet about it. And so it's just like this whole 1-page story of this little girl being abused, and she's like, why don't you stop them? And you don't know if she's talking about the parents or God. So it's kind of like just an interlude that I think might go into something else. I'm gonna have to reread issue 3 and see if something else happens. And then we go to the graveyard where supposedly this is the Savior, and he has some baby's casket. I don't know if he dug it up or if it's just dead or what. And he's talking about how a king and once upon a time, there was a beautiful king. He had many loyal subjects who sang his praises throughout the day, and it was never night. And so it's, and then it's basically him talking about Satan or Lucifer or whatever, and being cast out in the story of him. And the Savior is apparently Lucifer, and he puts the baby into the casket and covers it up. Don't know where the baby is, who the baby is, what that's supposed to mean, or anything. So yeah, that's how it ends. It's a 5-issue story arc, and I'm going to get all of them. I'm pretty much have decided. I mean, it's Mark Millar, so investing in this for a couple bucks or whatever is, I think, a fantastic idea because it's his first work, and he's done so many great things that, and I'm sure he's going to do other great things. I mean, he did Old Man Logan or Old Man Wolverine, and he's done a great Fantastic Four storyline. So he's done so much great stuff, and it's just hard to read this knowing that he's done such fantastic work. And there are so many glimpses of fantastic writing in here. Like, this is cool. in the beginning with Jesus burning and stuff like that, and it's just a nightmare or whatever. And that is good, and the writing is good, the dialogue is really good, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense because you don't know who these characters are. If there was a trade paperback, I'm sure I would have understood a lot more. Some of these things, they're slow, and that's really the pace of it. His writing has a really fantastic pace, and it's like he knows what he's doing. He knows where he wants to go to, and he knows how to get there. And it's just a matter of maturing into the writer that he's going to be to really put all of the puzzle pieces together, and to give the reader enough information so that they know exactly what's going on and they don't get lost. Some of these things are really fantastic. Some of these scenes are really fantastic. Like the Jesus character is hanging out with this lady who's brought flowers to church or whatever, and she gives it to him. I don't know if she thinks that he's really Jesus or not. But then having the cop kind of come in and attack him and bloody religious maniacs, that's just like brilliant kind of writing and creating. And just so many of these other scenes are really fantastic, the way they transition from one thing to the next. And that is the great pacing and the great writing of the book. The fact that he's drinking water and then turning it into wine, that's another great idea. This book has really a lot of really fantastic ideas that I don't think, like I said, he was mature enough to as a writer to really put it in really that fantastic kind of place that it needed to be. The scene where Jesus and his friend dodged paying the taxi money, that's really a funny kind of thing, and it's a fun little scene, and it's really enjoyable. And so there's a lot of really great things about the writing, and it's really I like it a lot. Like I said, I just wish I hadn't been so confused. As for the art, I really enjoy the art. It's very Frank Miller-ish. There's certain panels and pages where I'm just like, this is super Frank Miller. But there's also panels where I feel like it's a little bit more like the Hernandez brothers. It's very dark and lots of black areas, lots of positive and negative space. Like this totally looks like it could be Frank Miller. These faces here. And this car, and there's just a lot of this right here looks like it totally could be a Frank Miller panel. So I really love the art. I love how it's not overly rendered. There is a little bit of detail in some of the textures and stuff like that. But other than that, it's really super simple rendering and simple art and stuff. You can tell that he's a younger artist, or he's not completely in his wheelhouse yet. I mean, this neck's a little bit long, and this guy's a little funky, but it also adds to a little bit of the character and the emotions, and the characters. They're all really like top notch. You know exactly what they're saying and how they mean to say it by their emotions and the way they look and their eyes and all that stuff. It also has some really nice movement. It's really got some great movement from panel to panel, and like this movement, I mean, you know it. Your brain connects this car moving into the taxi or whatever, moving into its parking spot, and then the taxi guy saying, give me my money, and then them dashing off. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's really enjoyable to read on an artistic level. And I really do. I love this panel here of the glass breaking and the shards and stuff breaking. Much like Ed Piskor, I kind of wish some of these shards of glass were intertwined and overlapping each other instead of just kind of shooting out. But other than that, I really love the artist doing his work. I love this panel, and it's just an intelligent use of blacks and also a good eye for detail. I love this panel here. I'm going to copy the theme of the panel where there's so many times where it's a room, or you're with this panel here where it's a room, it's a bar, or it's a classroom or something, and there's just a whole lot of things going on, and you you know that it's a full room and there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's just really great. So as for a review, The Savior #2, I'm going to give it an 8. I really wish I could give it more. I think there's a lot going on, and I'm going to read the rest of them. I am going to get 1 and reread 3 and get 4 and 5, and I'll really probably come back and give you my thoughts on what I think about the series as a whole, really. And yeah, I'm going to give this an 8. The writing is just it's not mature enough to really grab me the way I wanted it to. And the art is really good. I really love it. I actually love it a lot. That's kind of carries the book a little bit. And